This is very personal work for me.
Politics.
I believe I was called to
Sex.
tell my story, use my voice, use
Gay
a voice
people.
for the community, to
Black
speak
people.
to and for a community of people
The underdog.
that's been ignored, denied,
Love.
overlooked.
Relationships. Religion.
This is my life's work.
Religion.
I want to use words to uplift, heal, inspire, encourage.
Do something different.
This podcast was brought to you by Green to Clean Professional Carpet Cleaning Services. Visit them at g2clean.com. Good day, thinkers, thought leaders, progressives, and dreamers. I am Craig, the writer Stewart, and this is So Much to Say. These are my thoughts in my voice on black shit, white shit, gay shit, and everything in between. Okay, so the purpose of this podcast is really to have a conversation with some educators here in the Atlanta area. I want to get to the bottom of what our children need, what our children lack, and what the black family can give to support you guys as educators. So I want to start by saying that among you, there's 123 years worth of experience in terms of all of your careers combined. I want to begin by talking or reading a piece of what Bill Cosby said many years ago, because he had talked about the lack of parenting in the black community. A lot of people were offended, mostly black people were offended because of what he said or because of how he said it. So I want to get your take on it, and then we want to go into some of your actual experiences. So again, this is something that Bill Cosby spoke about. He actually had a tour. He was going around the country speaking at a lot of the black high schools across the country. They're standing on the corner and they can't speak English. I can't even talk the way these people talk. Why you ain't, where you is, what he drive, where he stay, where he work, who you be. And I blamed the kid until I heard the mother talk. And then I heard the father talk. Everybody knows it's important to speak English except these knuckleheads. You can't be a doctor with that kind of crap coming out of your mouth. In fact, you will never get any kind of job making a decent living. People marched and were hit in the face with rocks to get an education. Now we've got these knuckleheads walking around. The lower economic people are not holding up their end in this deal. These people are not parenting. They are buying things for kids, $500 sneakers for what? And they won't spend $200 on Hooked on Phonics. People putting their clothes on backwards, isn't that a sign of something gone wrong? Brown or black versus the Board of Education is no longer the white person's problem. We have to take the neighborhood back. People used to be ashamed. Today a woman has 8 children with 8 different husbands or men or whatever you call them now. We have millionaire football players who cannot read. We have million-dollar basketball players who can't write 2 paragraphs. We as black folks have to do a better job. Someone working at Walmart with 7 kids, you are hurting us. We have to start holding each other to a higher standard. We cannot blame the white people any longer. So what is your first thought about that? And anybody can speak on it.
Well, I'm somewhat in agreement with what Bill Crosby said, simply because my own experience with my daughter and my son-in-law has been their parenting style. My daughter's or my son-in-law says things like, "Is you coming?" And I am against that kind of statement, because they have a 2-year-old.
Right.
And that 2-year-old is learning to speak. And that is what he's going to eventually say, "is you," instead of "are you."
Right.
So that is it's very difficult for me. But when I talk to my daughter and tell her that, and she doesn't speak like that, which is quite interesting that she doesn't speak like that, but her husband speaks like that. So
we know your position, but tell everyone listening what your role is with Atlanta Public Schools.
My role with Atlanta Public Schools is I'm a paraprofessional office clerk, And I've done a lot of roles with APS. That has not been my only role. I've been in a classroom. I've gone out to visit homes, trying to get children to come to school. When they don't come, I've done attendance issues with children and their parents. So I've had a lot of roles since 1978.
Okay. What else? Anybody else in terms of what?
I'd like to add that I believe is the language that the tone, I should say, that Bill Cosby is using. And I think parents teach their children what they know. If that's all they know, then that's what they're going to teach them. I think that we have a responsibility to teach children what we call switching. There's a way to talk depending on your audience. You and I switch. We know when we're sitting in a group, we can hee ha ha. There's a certain language that we use, but when we're on the job, there's a different language. So yes, that is an issue, but again, understanding that parents teach what they know.
And I definitely understand where Bill is coming from, but I think what a lot of people object to is those people and low income people and them people, like those pronouns, as if he's not included in the group.
Right.
And while I choose not to live my life in that situation, I definitely come from that situation. Right. I come from Southwest Atlanta, single parent home, so I understand. So I never speak about others as those people.
Right.
I choose not to live a certain way. I choose to live a certain lifestyle. That's a choice I have made through my positive choices through life. I chose to live a certain lifestyle, but I never forget where I came from and where I started.
And what's your role? Give us your role.
I'm an administrator in an elementary school.
Okay, and what's your role?
I'm a school counselor.
Okay.
In elementary school.
And so, but I agree wholeheartedly with some of what he's saying. Sometimes our parents are so intent on their children having the things that they never had, or having that becomes the focus, or having the freedoms that they never had. That becomes the focus instead of school being their primary focus. And a lot of our parents are living day to day, paycheck to paycheck. And so their lifestyle, their struggle is their primary focus instead of making their children's education be their primary focus and the struggle be secondary.
Because the struggle is more immediate, where the education is the long-term reward.
Right. And I think a lot of times our parents just don't understand how their actions impact negatively their children's education.
Right.
I would like to add that when I think about what has been said already, that even in the past, our parents focused on work, but yet our parents valued and respected education, wherein today that value of an education and the respect of teachers and an education is not there. Now, what has happened to cause that change? I look back and I said that integration has had an impact on how we have changed over time and how we have taken responsibility for our own learning and our own growth and development. With all of that that's happening, someone mentioned earlier about we're not teaching the children. When we were in school, we were taught that when I'm in a program, I use a certain language and my tone of voice changes. Wherein when I'm talking to you outside of school, then we use regular vernacular. So the church also played an important part in how we spoke and what we say. We've gotten away from the church as well. And I think all of these entities play an important part on how successful we are with our education, grasping the English language, everybody playing a critical role. And today, that what we just said, what Bill Cosby said, is lacking and missing. Now, how do we fill that void? That's a question that we really need to look at and focus on in order to make a difference, I think, in the lives of the boys and girls that are in our charge at this particular point in time in public education.
And so you're now retired, correct? But what was your role when you were in education?
I served in various capacities. I served as a teacher, an instructional specialist, an assistant principal, and a principal, as well as a professional development training specialist and an international mentor for administrators.
And I just want to add to what she said about the value of education. I think our society and our media has put such a spotlight on people who are successful without having an education, such as athletes who go straight out of high school, or ball players, actresses, singers, that we forget that those are people are one in a million.
Right.
Like those people, for every 50 people that get picked up in the draft, there were 200 who didn't get picked up. And so our media has put such a spotlight on famous people and professional athletes and singers and dancers and those type of things, where when we were growing up, lawyers and doctors and those people were the people we aspired. We aspired. Now everybody wants their child, and not everybody, I'm not going to characterize, but lots of people want their child to be the next LeBron, or the next Strahan, or the next Britney Spears, or the next Beyonce, without thinking that for every Beyonce, there were 10 people or 20 people who didn't meet their dream.
I was going to comment on the section where you read where Bill Cosby spoke about the parent having 7 children
and working at Walmart.
Again, to me, as a people, we are not healed from slavery, and I believe that's just vestiges of slavery that's still being poured over into African Americans as a people. Until we understand that having children is a precious commodity. It's not something you do just because.
Because to your point, at one time, because we were slaves, we were bought and sold to breed. And so it's almost like that behavior is still there, a part of us. We're just having children and babies because that's what comes natural.
But I think part of that has come about because of our social welfare system as well. When we didn't have a social welfare system, we were entrepreneurs. We owned our businesses.
We didn't have anything to fall back on like that.
Right. And we survived, and we provided for our families. But once we started this welfare system, it's almost like
a crutch.
A crutch for us, absolutely. And I think sometimes, I can't say all of the persons, because sometimes you need it
absolutely
because of circumstances. But I think right now, a lot of us, we rely too much on the social system that we have. And I think our system is failing us. I think our system, when we have persons who need assistance, then we need to put systems in place to support them, to help them to get a GED. We need to work with businesses to give them jobs, even the homeless people. I don't think we do enough for those people, and I think that's a part of the process. That's why they become homeless, because of the way that we have worked with them, a lack of an education or hard times. So I think in our system, we said that we're pouring money into education, but we're really not. As a matter of fact, we're cutting funding that needs to be put in education to help those communities that really need that help. We're not doing enough of that at this point in time.
Speak of communities, our community, what it looks like, feel like, even sound like, is so much different than it was 20 years ago. When you think of the 60s, the 70s, those were supportive communities where people took care of each other. You knew your neighbors. You knew the actions of what was going on. We do not live in communities like that anymore. Kids live in communities now where parents do not let kids go outside. So I think as a people, we have broken away from a strength. Our strength was we had a strong community basis before we had the welfare system.
And I want to go back to what you had said earlier about integration, because that ties into what you were just saying. In what ways do you think integration has hurt us? Because I too believe that, well, the point that you were making was once integration took place, it affected the way that we educated our kids. Do you think, or do you believe that perhaps we passed off the responsibility to the system, quote unquote, to educate our kids because it was now educated, and we had this idea that if the schools were integrated, our kids would get a better education?
Well, to speak to that, I just think that we educate our children different than they educate our children. And I know that some of our children are strong, opinionated, strong-willed young black boys have struggled in schools that are more white or more integrated because of cultural differences.
Yeah.
Whereas with a black mom, if you cut up in the store, you're liable to get your behind beat in that store. A white mom might threaten you with timeout as you pull all the stuff off the rack.
Right.
And that's going to be the same in the schools, and sometimes our black boys get labeled as behavior problems when they're just strong-willed and opinionated.
And it's interesting that you say that, because I just did a podcast a couple of weeks ago called The School to Prison Pipeline, and one of the articles that I read on that podcast, it was talking about just what you said and how we educate our kids differently than white people or whomever else might be in the classroom, because oftentimes they regard our kids as the girls as unladylike, as precocious, and just sassy. So they're sometimes misinterpreted.
But we have to be careful too with that, because it's not just the white people.
Right.
It is us.
Elaborate on that.
Meaning, many of us feel like we've
Arrived.
That's a
So
great
just
word.
because we have a black
Right.
face doesn't mean we have a black agenda.
Exactly. It doesn't mean
doesn't-
that we have the best interests of our children.
Right.
It doesn't mean that we can relate.
Exactly.
Right.
Our children need to be educated by people who understand the walk that
And
they
their-
are going
and
through.
their
Regardless of the tone.
And
that's there.
everybody cannot. We have some white educators who do an excellent job
Outstanding.
of relating to our children, accepting our children. They're not afraid to go to the homes. They're not afraid to get close and down and dirty with the children. And we have black educators who are afraid to go. I'm not going to their house.
Or, "Ooh, I
I'm
can't touch
afraid.
him."
Or, I don't want him in my room because of this, that, and the other. So it's about how you relate. It's about your experiences growing up. It's about your frame of mind, because there are some people who are open-minded enough to be able to handle it, but everybody's not, whether you're black or white. And I want to go back to what somebody said about the number of children people have. And part of that is about the healing in our community, and that children don't equal love.
Right.
Children don't equal acceptance. And I think some people in our community are broken, or not broken, but they're missing something. And they fill that gap with children.
Yeah.
But what happens is children, if you look at human growth and development, children need a bonding period with their parents. And for every child that comes in before that bonding is complete, that child misses something. So if I have a child and then 10 months later I'm having another child, my first child hasn't completed the bonding
right.
process, and therefore they're going to have a
That
gap
gap
that's
for
going to
their
have to be
life.
filled with something.
Yeah.
Then if I have two more children before my first baby is out of diapers, then now I have two children
Speak,
with
black
gaps that need to be filled. And I think our black kids fill those gaps with unwanted behaviors, unwanted hobbies,
Yeah, kind of like acting
skills.
out in ways.
Right.
They're just parenting. The ideal, again, remember we were talking about vestiges of slavery. The kids were sold off. Now we're keeping the kids, not understanding that that gap is there and what to do to fill the gap.
Yeah.
We've always had big mamas, grandmamas, extended families to help us with the process of raising children.
But see, now extended families are younger.
That's another
So
point
what
that I wanna bring
happens
up.
is mama is trying to live her life
Yes.
because
Yeah.
she's still young,
Yeah.
and she still feels that she needs to be doing XYZ because I have to
Same as
live
the
my
doctor.
life. Where moms now coming to elementary school, we have 20-year-old moms,
Absolutely.
18-year-old moms, 25-year-old moms. They still want to do the things that 25-year-olds do. And while some of our parents were, my mother was young. My mother was in her 20s. She was in her first year of college when she had me. She stopped going to college. She sacrificed everything to make sure I had everything I needed.
And that's not really what we're seeing happen.
And that doesn't happen always today.
Always.
Some people do, but they sacrifice
In
their
other ways.
children in the process.
And that leads me to say that one of our governors, I can't remember which one, he made a statement earlier that we need to develop or we need to create reform schools for some of our students. But to me, what we need to create boarding schools. And I think putting our children in a boarding school, similar to what to take up that slack that was just mentioned about the nurturing. I think if children went to a boarding school and was only allowed to go home periodically, then I think they would get what they deserve and what they need in order to be successful in school and for the rest of their lives.
But Go ahead.
That's all right. Go
To
ahead.
add to that, even if you look at boarding schools, most wealthy white people send their kids
They
away
do.
to boarding school, and it works for them. We would just have to, it would be a concept that would include those who are economically
Underprivileged,
challenged.
economically challenged.
Now let's get to what our black kids need and our black families are not. We talked about the failure of social services to support our kids, and this is a topic that people who know me know I talk about a lot. I think if we want to reform social services, attach education and the importance of education to the social services. To me, and it used to be a
Give us an
time
example
like
of that.
when
What do you mean?
when housing projects were proliferate in Atlanta. If your child missed a certain number of days of school, you
It
had to
affected your
leave.
benefits.
It affected your benefits in the housing project. Like to me, if your child, when you go to recertify every month or every
6
months you
months, every
recertify, then you need to be
Exactly.
bringing your child school records.
Yes.
How many parent teacher conferences have you attended?
Yes.
How many days of school has your child missed? We need to be attaching education and what's happening with your child educationally with the benefits. Not just are you trying to find a job, but are you trying to find a job as well as are you trying to
Taking
keep
care of the children.
the children, because the social services are really to benefit the children.
Absolutely.
And so we need to really reform that system, because I think a lot of what happens is because our parents are struggling so hard on this hand that sometimes when I go to work, I need somebody to keep my younger baby. So my older child stays at home to be the babysitter instead of coming to school.
Which affects their attendance.
Which affects their attendance, which
And
affects their
learning.
grades.
Learning, yeah.
You
So
know,
have there been
and their
instances-
socialization.
Absolutely. So have there been instances where you've had to actually knock on the door? I know you mentioned earlier
Yes.
that there are white teachers and black teachers that will go to the homes.
That is, I worked at a school where that was the norm.
That was the norm.
I went and you had to knock on the door, and the kids would be in the house with the parents, and they just wouldn't send them to school. Again, I think because African American, just as a people, we have such a healing that needs to take place. If we don't start to look at other alternatives of life for our children, boarding schools, connecting social programs to education, so that, or we are going to continue to breed these violent kids. We're going to
With behavioral problems and
the
aggression.
criminals. And I think I was reading an article about 2 months ago, and it was stating how mental health will be the number one field in the next 15 to 20 years. Why? Because we're having kids. There are no resources when kids who are, even if it's a social illness or mental illness induced by social causes, you can have that. Poverty can cause mental illness. So looking at what are we going to do when it comes to how do we do this? And I think as African Americans, we got to think about what are we doing for our kids.
And we have to erase the stigma of dealing with mental illness, because any adult that had a mental illness, 9 times out of 10, it started to manifest near puberty, near the onset of puberty. And we have lots of people who are afraid to seek help for their children, or afraid to even acknowledge that there is something that needs healing in their children, that their children are not perfect. No one is perfect. Everyone needs help with something. And what we have to do is, when we have adults who have uncontrolled mental illness, who are very violent, who have recidivism, multiple criminal enterprises, that stuff started to manifest in elementary school. I would tell anybody, any problem you see as an adult, in most cases, not every case, manifested in elementary school. We saw signs of it. And like we talk about all the time, where mental illness is real in elementary school. We have kids who have these kids deal with so much. Our kids deal with so much. Like, they have seen murders. They have seen rapes in their house. They have been the victims of molestation. They have been the victims of violent crimes. And those people,
Beatings,
PTSD is real. Mental illness is real. And some of it is caused by the environment, but we have to deal with it. And schools, period, black schools, white schools, they do not have enough resources currently and knowledge currently to deal with the influx of mental illness that we see as educators today.
And that leads me back to the point what you were saying with educators. Educators are expected to be the cure-all for everything, and that is not right. I think that funding needs to be made available. We talked about right now, schools are giving money for FTE per student.
What's FTE?
FTE is
Full-time equivalent.
equivalence, and that's how money is given, and it's not adequate. She just gave you a perfect example. Children need mental health assistance right there at the school. So, to me, based upon your school and your school needs, money should be allocated based on each individual school needs to meet whatever the problems or the needs of that student body. And that's not being done at this particular point in time. The social services need to be right there on site in many of these schools to address some of the issues. Teachers should not have to deal with a lot of the things that they have to deal with. And I think if the governor and all of the Chamber of Commerce's, if they got together and spoke with people in the systems, then I think they would realize just how important and crucial it is to have all of these resources right there in every school that needs these resources for the students. And as we indicated, the type of child that we're educating today is quite different from the child that we
10 years
educated years ago.
And speaking of that, we need parent education. Some of our parents just do not understand
They don't know.
fully the impact that each action has on their child.
Well, but let me say this. Remember your point, but one of the things that I was going to ask when we were talking about PTSD and ADHD and those kinds of things, do you see an influx of parents that are having their kids labeled, if you will, so that they can get the financial benefit of that?
Well, the law, the label, if a child is labeled ADHD, there's no financial benefits that's going to come.
Okay.
There has to be, give me the term that would be in order to get financial
You have to
support.
you have to have some type
Severe-
of learning disability,
Behavior disorder.
right?
Right.
Develop,
It has to be
developmental
developmentally
disability,
disabled. That's what
cognitive
it
or
is.
developmental
But,
disabilities.
Yeah, but even our parents in understanding the effect of what we call drug-induced psychosis. What's put into when our parents are smoking whatever it is they smoke, the kids are in the car, the kids are in the house,
The kids are in the womb.
Right.
and we get these kids, and yes, there is a higher prevalence of kids who are labeled ADHD. But again, look at the environment that they're coming from. And again, having the tools in the school.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to, because you had made a point about the parents aren't engaged enough. I was watching the State of Black America the other night on TV One, and one of the things that they mentioned was we're expecting these kids to be engaged and to perform at school and to defy all of these odds, but a lot of their parents, as you all have said in this conversation, aren't engaged. They're not present in the school at the PTA meetings. And even when you get to the high school level, a lot of these kids, when it comes time to apply for college and financial assistance, they can't even fill out a FAFSA because the parents either A, aren't doing taxes, or they're not even there for the meetings to find out how to learn to do the taxes. So what were you going to say in terms of parents being out of touch?
Well, two things. One, a lot of our parents are scared of labels.
Yeah.
So the help
That's
that children could get, they don't get because our parents don't want their child to have that label.
In terms of like what?
Special ed,
Yeah. Can I
any kind of label. If you're gonna label their child and you saying something is wrong with their child, our parents run from that.
That's part of the black culture.
It is.
Which goes back
Seeking
to
any type of therapy or label,
It is.
any type of mental health,
Right.
it can be clear as day in your eye.
It can be
that
in your
goes,
family.
That goes
Yeah.
way back
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
black people.
yeah,
way
beyond,
back.
Yeah, beyond
So
school.
Yeah.
when we have children who have these symptoms or diagnoses, if you're not going to deal with it, parents, they're not willing to
And
do
that's where the parenting classes come in. I talk about parents being engaged. It's not just about being engaged. I think a lot of our parents we have parents who are very engaged and are there. Some of them too engaged. Helicopter. They do the word. They carry them down the hallway. They want to carry their lunch trays, all the nine. But we also have parents who don't understand how to engage. They don't understand how their involvement benefits their child. Like, they don't understand that when you come to the school and you're there,
Right.
it makes your child have a certain pride and a certain, your child wants to perform better because they know their mom is going to be there. Like, some of it is not just about some of it is emotional. It touches the emotional intelligence
Intelligence,
of
yeah.
our children. It's not all about you can come and help volunteer, because some of our parents, I feel, are intimidated. They feel, and some of our schools are not welcoming to our parents who are lower income. I'm going to be honest. Some of our schools are not welcoming. Some of our schools are intimidating to our parents. They use language that, most parents, we say when we write for parents, when we speak for parents, we speak on the 8th grade level. Some of our people forget about that, and they try to speak like they're
Above,
speaking to
yeah.
a doctoral, right?
You have to recognize your audience.
Yes,
Right,
and so sometimes we make our schools not welcoming to parents, but even when we
So
do,
the ones that would be more hands-on are intimidated because it's not as well.
and they don't know how. Like, what can I do? I can't help my child with their homework.
'Cause I do it.
I can't do this. So what use is it for me to come to the school? But there's always something you can do, even if it's this the emotional aspect of getting your child to have pride in what they're doing. So when their parent comes, they have that pride. I think I talk about reform, social services. Part of that is parenting. I think anybody who's having a new baby and who is on some type of social service program needs to have parenting classes that tells them when your child is born, no baby talk. We are talking to our children as they are, like we're using regular, everyday language with them. No baba and wah and binky, none of that. We're using everyday real language with them. Whole language. How important it is to read to your child, for your child to hear your voice and positive things in the womb. Like, we're not listening to mask off when our baby's in the womb. That is not productive to the growing of the dendrites and the neurons for the baby. That's good to listen to in your car when you're on your own, but when your child is in the car, your child is in the womb, the type of interactions and arguments and relationships you have when your baby is in the womb. Read to your child every day, in the womb and out of the womb. They need that. Even if you are reading a Dr. Seuss book, if that's the only book you can read that Dr. Seuss book. Dr. Seuss taught the world how to read. Dick and Jane, they back on the market. Buy some Dick and Jane. Everybody learn how to read with Dick and Jane.
I think we also have to look at our parents, the people who are having babies, and understanding that they don't have the model. There's not a model for them.
That's why they need those parenting classes from the beginning when they get pregnant, to teach them how to raise a scholar. We're not just raising a baby. We are raising someone a citizen.
Right.
Like, this is what you need to do from the beginning so that your child can be successful in school. A lot of times we talk about, they say, our black kids don't achieve at the rate of white and Asian kids, and it's only because our kids come to school already a year and two behind. They come behind because the things that all of our parents don't know, you start reading from your child from day one. The day they can hear your voice, you start reading to them. When you get them dressed, let's put on your blue shirt. Let's put on your blue shoes.
Everything has an article.
Yeah.
Everything has a name, and you speak it.
But I would like to go back and add with what you just said. You said sometimes they come a year behind. They're always a year behind, something to that effect. But I have observed children coming from other countries who can't even speak English. But
So
yet,
classy.
after a year or two working with us, they excel. They become the top student in the school. So to me, that gets back to valuing and
Education,
Their
absolutely.
parents come over here,
Yep.
and they know when they come to school, they are coming to school for a purpose. And that purpose is to get an education so that they can help their parents. And that's the way they show love to their parents. Those are some of the things that we try to do in working with our parents, to get our parents to see the value of their children coming to school. We told them it was a job. So your child coming to get an education was his paycheck. Now, do you want your child to end up with zero at the end of the week? Or at least $10 or something, whatever we were giving. So we try to use situations like that to work with our parents. So even some of the parents that we have, we try to put some things in place to help those parents. With assembly programs, parents would come in ready to walk out the door. We had to teach them, you are not walking out of this door until the program is over.
You had to teach them how to act.
Right, we had to teach our parents the appropriate behavior that they needed to exhibit when they were in special programs and programs in which we were honoring or showcasing their students. So, those types of things, some, schools can do those types of things. But again, with our parents and working with our parents, we do need funding, and we need social services in the schools to support what we're trying to do with the students that we receive.
And I know that there are probably people listening feeling like, or thinking, there are a lot of systemic things at play and a lot of social issues at play that prevent a lot of this, productivity from happening. One of the articles that I read was talking about the whole war on drugs in terms of decriminalizing marijuana. Because, of course, now white folks are making money off of it, and it doesn't carry the same penalty that a lot of black folks, a lot of black men in particular, were locked up for. And so a lot of them are not even present in these homes or in these communities. So what are some of the things that we can do to really support the children and to support the parents and to get those parents in there and make them more present, more visible, and more active?
Support your local school. Right now we're on the heels of a charter movement, a voucher movement. Let's mass exit the public school.
Explain to everybody what the difference is with a charter school.
So charter schools are exempt from a lot of state requirements. There are some things they have to do. They get exempt from certain things that public schools have to do.
Like,
for example, some charter schools can choose who they let in, a certain population. Like some charter schools target a certain area of the city. Some charter schools, they have a lottery, but so while through the lottery, whoever makes it in the lottery gets to come, they don't have to stay. I can put you out. My neighborhood school, I can't put you out of my neighborhood school. That's your school.
So in other words, their numbers or test scores are probably going to be higher because they're picking who they want.
Even if they don't pick and choose, they pick who they can pick and choose who can stay. They have the leeway to have a longer school day if that's what they need. They have the leeway to have smaller class sizes. If we have a class size too small, we might lose a teacher in the middle of the year.
Where with the public school,
that's the public school.
You have to take whatever community you're serving.
And charter schools, at a certain time of the year, they cut it off. If you're not there by this time, you can't come. As a public school, at my school, we had 3 kids to enroll the last week of school, 2 weeks before school was out. Because they were coming from up north where they go to school till June, July. We get out of school in 2 weeks. The parent was like, oh, really? Where I'm from, we stay in school till June or till July. Okay, but you got to research your schools before you move. We're getting ready to get out of school. We have had 20 kids at my school enrolled from March to May. Yes. And we got out of school May 24th. So just think, you coming to school the last month of school for what?
Right.
So I think charter schools, they can control when you come in and when you go out. They can control the discipline. Yes. If we have a discipline behavior at our school, we have to deal with it.
We have to deal
with
it.
We can't put them out. You need to have the same kind of flexibility that charter schools have?
Well, and that's what some of the school districts are doing. The state has allowed some school districts to have charter districts. Many school districts in the metro area are going charter district where schools with a local governance team can decide, a local team can decide what their school wants. So a lot of districts in the metro area are going toward that, so we can have more flexibility, but we're not there yet. And even though we're still neighborhood schools, we're not going to be able to put people out. We have to deal with everybody. So you can't judge this charter school by what you judge me by, because I have to take all grade A, grade B, grade C, whereas you can take all grade A, grade B, and grade C, but you can put out half of them when you get ready to, by whatever means necessary. And that's just the facts.
And I think that's where the state is lacking with their failure to come up with regulations. The teacher is held accountable for everything in public schools. Parent is not held accountable for anything. And what she just mentioned with charter schools, those parents have to sign an agreement. They do. And if they don't live up to that agreement, then that charter school has the right to withdraw that child at any time. Now, if the public school had the same opportunity to do that, then I think you will see a big difference in public schools. So again, the state needs to come up with some kind of accountability system for parents.
Do we know some of the things that are in that charter agreement?
Yes, volunteer hours. They have to have a certain number of volunteer hours at the school. It could be at a volunteering at at a program to serve as a docent or something at the program. It could be volunteering at field day. It could be volunteering in the classroom in the main office
So
or
this
in the
is basically
library.
going back to what you were
Right.
saying that social services
Right.
needs to be doing.
Right. It could be the children have to wear a uniform. They can't miss but a certain number of days of school. They have behavior things in that contract. They have to come to attendance. They have to come to a certain number of parent conferences. So there are lots of things that are, and it depends on the charter school, that are in that contract that those parents have to agree to, those who take their children to charter schools. And the issue with public school is we don't have all of those things. And I think it's not all of our parents, because our parents that are able do. We have a large amount of parents who do, but our most needy children, our most at-risk children, those are the parents who are typically on some type of social service. And that's why I think education needs to be tied to social service.
Yeah.
The same way a charter school has attendance requirements, these social services need to have attendance
And your
requirements.
benefits are tied to
Volunteer
those.
requirements, all of those things, because those are the things that impact our children. We have children, we call, why are you not at school? Oh, they said they stomach hurt. Well, they stomach hurt today, they stomach hurt yesterday, they stomach hurt 2 days ago.
Are you taking them to the
Are you taking them to the doctor? Or their stomach just conveniently hurts every Monday and they miss every
Friday.
Monday. Or you come check them out every day at 1 o'clock. School doesn't get out till 2:30. Or you don't bring them the first week of school. Or they're not doing anything the first week of school. Don't bring them the last week of school. Or they're not doing anything the last week of school. Just lots of little things. I've had to personally go knock on doors, even doing testing. Why's your child not here? Oh, I didn't know they were testing.
But-
We have so many ways to communicate with parents. Now, when we were in school, there was no Facebook,
No,
Twitter,
no.
Email.
Instagram, email, robocalls. Like, we institute all that. Plus, we still use the good old paper. And we call your house, but you change phone
We
numbers
go to
too
your
much.
house.
We can't find you. We have your child sick at school all day, and we can't find you because your number changes 5 times a month or whatever's going on in your life. There needs to be some consistency in your life for your child. You can't move every 5 months because your neighbor has made you angry or because you didn't feel like paying your rent, so now you have to move. You have to be consistent for your children. We have children who are in 5th grade who have been to 10 elementary schools.
In elementary schools. That's
And
right.
I think what she's saying is there need to be a state level of expectation for all schools to have the equal requirement. Charter schools should not look different from a public school when it comes to just taking care of the basic need. We're not talking about testing or learning yet. We're just talking about getting the kid to the door. I think that standard for all schools in order for kids to go to school should be the same no matter if it's charter, private, public, whatever you want to call it. So that no matter if you're rich or poor, this is the standard for if we're educating kids in this country.
And I just want to echo again, because I just know that there's somebody listening thinking, yeah, well, black families don't have the same resources that white families have. We understand that. We understand that there are different things at play, but these are just some of the tools, and hopefully somebody listening can apply some of these tools in their own lives and with their own children.
But if that standard is across the board for every child who attends school, it won't matter if you don't have resources. If the state requires for you to participate, if your child is of a certain age and you should be at school, if you can't miss certain amount of days, if that is the requirement, it should matter if you're wealthy or not.
I don't think the state or the states are intending for it to be standard.
Yeah. And that's where I'm going with it, because when you go back to the system, the intention is there. I mean, at the root of it, at the base of it, it is a black and white thing, and I do literally mean black and white.
Maybe on down the line, and maybe present, that is segregation.
Yeah.
I see segregation coming back into play as far as the school system is concerned. The charter schools, that they will have the more elite, maybe, children.
Already do.
Okay. And then the public sector will have the poor,
It's by
economic,
design, is what
it's by
you're
design.
It's by
Yes,
design.
downtrodden, yes. It's by design.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here. You know, a lot of countries that people like to compare the U.S. to
They have.
don't educate every child the same.
Yeah.
In the U.S., it's all about the appearance of providing every child with the same educational opportunity. A lot of countries, we like to compare ourselves to Asian countries, European countries. A lot of them are not, every child gets the same education no matter what. Some of those countries track children from a very early age. And is tracking okay? Not always. But there are times when, like, I like the fact that some schools, for example, my own children go to a school, they only have college track. The only track they have is college track. My child is not a college track child. He needs something else.
Right.
But that's not an option. So he's not thriving in that environment. Whereas another school down the street, they have shop where the kids can come out industry certified to change oil and change tires and work on cars. We have another school where the kids can come out as industry certified chefs or a cosmetologist or something like that. There needs to be options for all children that don't mean one size fit all. Right now in the U.S., we are still trying to, first of all, our calendar, our schooling is still based on the agricultural model.
Yeah.
Okay, the way the school calendar is designed, the way the school day is designed, is still based on our children having to leave to go support and work in the field or do whatever. Our children are not working in the field anymore.
Right.
That is not the jobs they are choosing to partake of.
And the parents either.
And our parents either. Therefore, the model of schooling needs to change.
It
You know,
needs to change.
do we talk about summer loss? And I know I'm jumping all over the place, but we talk about summer loss, and our kids lose so much during those summer months where they used to be working that we're wasting time. You can take the 180 days that the state requires for children to go and divide that up so many ways. Like, why are we going to school in the middle of the snow when we have to be out of school all the time? School should be closed when it's snowing outside and cold, and be open in the later in the year. Not in the summer. We have to have the summer. Yeah, plenty of times it's cheaper to go when it's not the summer. It's more expensive to go on vacation in the summertime. So we can rearrange some of these vacations so they're not so lengthy and long, so that our children get what they need. But I just think
all schools shouldn't have the same schedule.
based on what their children need. I just think there's so much, but there's always something we can do to start small. If you want to know what you can do today, call your state senators and your representatives and talk about true early child care. Schooling is not mandatory in Georgia until the age of 6. That means until you're 6, you are not, unless you bring your child. Now, if I bring them at 5, I'm mandated to keep them there. But I legally in Georgia don't have to bring my child to school till 6. That's first grade. Yeah. That means you can bring a 6-year-old in first grade who's never seen a piece of a classroom and put them in first grade with people who've been in school 2 and 3 years. So first of all, we need to talk about early child care. Then we need to talk about parenting classes as a part of early child care, as a part of birthing programs at hospitals, all hospitals, because we have lots of parents who live in trailer parks. We have lots of whites and Hispanic poverty people too, not just talking about black people. If you are in poverty, if you need help, if you don't have resources of your own, the resources should be there. And part of that is teaching you how to parent for your child to go to school. Because there are some things you do very differently for a child who intend for this child to go to school and be successful. Like, talk about programs. They are piloting a program right now in Emory, where nurses come in and teach the parents about reading to their children in the womb, about how to have conversations with their children in the womb. That shouldn't be a pilot anymore. We know that works. That should be across the board at every hospital where children are born. These these classes need to be available. Mandated. So there are some things you can do small right now. Call your senators and tell them to stop cutting public funding. For every dollar, for example, this is big in the news right now, state charters. So charter schools are going around the school districts. Typically, the charter school petitions to the school district and say, may I have permission to open in your district? Charter districts can say, no, we have an oversaturation. We don't have any room. We don't think your business model is productive or long lasting. They can go petition to the state. Well, we have 5 or 6 state charter schools right now up for review who have D's and F's. The charter school model was supposed to give them a better than public school model. But we have 6 schools right now sponsored by the state who are failing, D's and F's. They're worse than the schools they supposedly were supposed to replace. But yet the state keeps approving them. And the state wants to take over low low performing schools in this
To make 'em like
new
that.
district they're trying to go around and go behind the voters back and do. But the schools you manage are failing. Not all of them. There are some that are doing great, but a large majority of the state schools are failing. Tell your representatives. Tell your
You said it right.
Tell your representatives to stop cutting public funding. If you make a mandate, fund the mandate. It's very simple. Put a wraparound, what we call wraparound services, but those social services at the schools. If I have a high attendance problem, there's something my school needs. If I have kids not coming to school because they're dirty, because they're sick, that means I need health care and laundry services and bathing services at my school. If I have lots of kids who have mental health issues or counseling family issues, their families going through struggles, that means I need some counselors and some therapists at my school. Tell your representatives to put, in fact, go to your local businesses. How are you supporting the community school? We have so many businesses in the community who don't support the community schools. They support the charter schools. These charter schools and some of these private schools can raise millions of dollars.
So then that goes back to
Why can't the public school
the
do that?
parents in those communities, though. If
Right,
they're
they're
intimidated to
empowered.
come to the
Right.
school to participate in the school, what's the likelihood that they're going to go to a local business owner and say, "Listen, we need you guys to support what's
They're
going
not.
on at this
But
school"?
that's what we need, and we need the people who do have the resources to do that. You can serve as a representative for the people in your community who don't have that voice. Everybody is not going to be empowered. But there are those of us in communities who do have that power, who do have those resources, who do have those connections. Are you using your connections to promote this charter school that's pulling away the best students, that's pulling away funding from the traditional school, or the private school down the street that's opening? Are you pushing that because you want your children to have a better option? Your children can have a better option. Fix your public school.
Now, in terms of like education, because I believe that part of the problem too, and this is just another tier, education has not kept up with technology. You know, and you have so many kids. I have nieces and nephews. You have so many kids that are so locked into an iPad or an iPhone, and they're really good at it. It's instinctive. So I just think in some instances the lessons need to be tied into education, or the lessons need to be tied into technology, whether it's implementing some of their the lessons where the kids can use their iPhones, and of course, and I don't mean like in the elementary level, because I know some of those.
They do it now.
Some of them do have.
Now that's part of technology is in the classroom. Now you
And it
have
is.
some, and you have some
In the city.
In the city, you have some where they use iPhones to do their projects or to communicate with the teacher or do lessons. Everyone has iPads now. Everyone.
But it has to be a continuation of teachers continuing to learn,
use-
because
yeah.
you know technology changes every day.
Right. And
Every
then-
second is something
and then
different.
sometimes
And
are there
teaching is
teachers
different.
who,
It's just
and then
different
sometimes
when-
are there teachers that are perhaps older, that are intimidated
Yes.
by the
Or
technology.
young, or some young teachers coming
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, that are
Yeah.
intimidated by using an iPad.
Yeah.
But I think something that impedes that when it does is that we're so focused on testing that because you're so focused on the testing that sometimes you don't have time to efficiently and productively use the technology that you need to use. Oftentimes we want our students to do project-based activities and learning and experiential learning. However, because sometimes we're so focused on, I got to achieve so much on this test that we tend to ignore or not spend sufficient amount of time. So I think, again, the State Department needs to do something to reduce the required testing that they are forcing schools to do, because I think that is having a detriment to the educational achievement of many of our students.
I also think it impacts those low performing schools. If you
What the
look
tests
at
do?
if you look at schools that have high transition, high attendance, poor attendance, and you look at testing. If children are out a percentage of time and the test is based on that 180 days, more than likely your test is going to be skewed because my kids
They
don't
weren't there.
come.
Right.
Right. So the learning, again, as we spoke earlier about changing the model, how we educate. Our kids need to be in school all year round.
I
Our
believe
kids, testing the test is not the test, it's the timing. It's not enough time. The school day is too short. When you have kids that are behind or enter school 2 years behind, that's 7.5 hours. We need more time if we're going to get them where they need to be in a sufficient amount of time. Okay.
And speaking of the technology, I know some people might say, okay, you going back to limited resources. Everybody doesn't have access to an iPhone or the internet. Get your hustle on. That's no excuse in 2017 because every major internet provider, if your family gets social service benefits, will give you discounted internet. Not only that, those free phones you're going out there getting, get a smartphone for your child to use. There are lots of refurbished, selling. There are places where you can get these devices for cheap. There are programs that we've offered to our parents. Come to 3 classes and your child can take home a computer. And people don't come. The children who are the most needy, there are so many resources out there. Our parents just have to be willing to sacrifice and go get them.
And that's what the problem is.
And that goes back to having something mandatory that it needs to be tied to teachers' welfare.
It's no excuse for you to say we don't have internet in our home. Every internet provider provides discounted internet if you receive benefits. That's right.
Yes. And here in Georgia, and this might be helping somebody, in Georgia, if you have if you are on food stamps, SNAP, you can get AT&T internet.
AT&T does it. Comcast
for $10.
does it. Right. Comcast does the same thing. Yeah. That's why I said every major provider here does it. So there's no excuse. There's so many people with phone companies now. You can get a phone and get an iPad or a tablet for free. You know, they have resources. We just have to be, first of all, our people are prideful. Our people don't want no help, don't want to ask for no help, don't want to take no help. I don't need your help. I don't need what you offering. We still have problems like that. Our people are prideful about the wrong things. We are very prideful about how we look. Our child will miss school so they can go get their hair laid to the side for prom or for school pictures or for the school dance. But you don't want to go ahead and ask somebody for some free internet so your child can do their school projects. So we're prideful. We're prideful. Our children got the best. Boy, we got them new J's. We got them little religion jeans. We got them. Oh, honey, we got that new car. Okay, but your child don't come to school every day.
So then that goes back to what you were saying with Bill Cosby. How our parents have put a value on material things rather than that education, and looking at what we indicated, what can be done right now. So one of the first things that I see is parents need to step up to the plate and make sure they're doing all that they can do for their children.
And if they don't know something, ask somebody.
Right? And in addition to that, the state need to provide adequate and appropriate funding to the schools to provide those services to help those parents who are deficient in other areas.
So it sounds like we're all saying the same thing that Bill Cosby said. Yeah. We're just using different language.
Right. Because in the end, it's about parents are their child's first teacher.
Yes.
First. And with that comes responsibility. As your child's first teacher, are you teaching your child to survive in the now, in the hood? Or are you teaching your child so that your child can be a productive citizen and survive in the world? And that's what you got to think about. Is what you're teaching your child, because every parent teaches their child something. But what is that something you're teaching? Are you teaching them to be successful right now in this environment, in this hood? Or are you teaching them to be helping them be successful forever in the future for the world and what's to come?
Because they're learning from watching you, not just
everything,
not just education, but in terms of how to be in relationships.
Yes.
Whatever kind of relationships you have in your life, that's what they're learning as
well.
Yes.
What you let them watch on TV, they're learning. We have so many girls. What is a frenemy? We didn't talk about frenemies in school, but so much reality TV now. They watch that, and that is how our young women are learning to interact with each other based on what they see on TV. Our young men are learning to react to react to our young women the way they see men on TV react to women, or the men in their neighborhood, or the men in their house. So everything you do is you are teaching your child. And it's just about what you want them to learn. Like, do you want them to be successful now, or do you want them to be successful in the future?
So what we all are saying is our first point of contact is the parent.
Absolutely.
I would say the first contact with the parents, but some of our parents need those services that the state needs to provide. My colleague just indicated that she said the world, I want to use the term global,
Yes.
in a global society. Because when we look at America now, we have an influx of immigrants, and they speak various language. Not only do we need to speak English, our children need to have at least a second language.
Bilingual.
Right. When we look at children from other countries, they know 3 and 4 and 5 languages. And I notice now that a lot of our American teachers now are working abroad, and I'm happy to see that that's happening as well. So helping our students to grow and develop so that they can be successful in a global society, no matter where they are.
And you know what? People who are listening right now who want to do something today. I can't go bring $1 million to my community school. Go in your school. Mentor a child. There's a child right now who has a gap in their life that you who are successful, and you don't have to be rich successful, but if you are gainfully employed,
Productive.
if you are a productive voting citizen, if you are in your community doing something positive for your neighborhood, then you are successful. Mentor a child. Help a family. Reach out to someone who may be struggling, a parent. Look, girlfriend, let me take you to this parent-teacher conference with me. I'm on my way. Let's go. I'm going to let my teenager keep your babies, or we're going to take your babies with us, and we're going to go to this conference together. Take a friend with you. When you go to parent conferences, when you go to something at the school, and you see your neighbor still at the house, knock on that door. Girl, come on with me. It's parent-teacher night. Let's go. Help somebody. Reach up. We have to go back to the old way
Yes,
of
we do.
reaching back and helping each other.
Yep.
Everybody in their neighborhood has somebody you can reach out and say,
I agree.
I got your back. I'm going to help you. You know what? I'm going to keep your kids right now so you can go to the parent conference without having to worry about all of them. I got you. Or you need a ride? Girl, I'll take you up there. I'm going that way. So there's something you can do right now. Help somebody in your community. Go to your neighborhood school, your neighborhood public school. Mentor a child. Volunteer. You have something to share with those young people. Those young people need to see people with their experience who look like them doing something besides shaking their butts, shooting balls, and singing in front of a microphone.
Okay, so the purpose of this podcast is really to have a conversation with some educators here in the Atlanta area. I want to really get to the bottom of the needs that our children, our community need, what our children lack, and what the Black family can give to support you guys.